Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Roswell, New Mexico. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with the whole situation with Max and Teska, who, obviously, to kind of ease his mind, is like, hey, here I am presenting myself in the form of your friend, which obviously, like, that there's layers to that, but she's trying to unlock something in Max. I was thinking just like them. I was like, was a plan to resurrect Jones, and it's like, no. It's just kind of a literal passing of the torch. Basically, as Teska kind of eventually explains, that basically every alien has this latent potential in them that their powers can go beyond what they... I mean, to be fair, each one of them has kind of presented their powers going beyond what they've always been, but maybe their powers being what they are now is kind of like their powers in their truest form, and it just took them a long time to like fully get to that. But Max has so much more power than he realizes, like, because Michael has the whole fire thing, but Max specifically has the blue flame, because every alien, I think, like, there's some overlap, but some have very unique abilities, and Jones has been collecting them like candy over the years. Like, every clone he injected with the different abilities, and Max, I guess, was going to be the his grand creation. That was going to be it. I mean, Max is probably going to be, at least for now, probably his final body until he needed another new body. But yeah, Max is going to be the culmination of everything. And so all these powers are there, and Teska's trying, because Teska is continuing what Jones started. It was Jones' plan, but things have to adapt because Jones isn't around anymore. The plan was for him to get take control of Max's body, but if they can't have that, then they're just going to take Max and use him to be their savior. I think they're going to have him fill the role of Jones. He's going to, since their savior is gone, Max has got to fill that role and make it his destiny. So that's why Teska's pushing him to kind of eventually become that savior, that dictator, to kind of fill that void to some extent. She has to be aware of Michael's existence, but I don't know what that's all about, whether or not she, like, I guess because Max has all the power, because if anything, it's like, well, Michael would be the legitimate heir to the throne, but Max is the powerhouse necessary to kind of do what they need in the end. That, you know, what was it, Aphiakis or something like that. I don't know if that's like an alien god that they worship, or is that someone very specific she's referencing. That is almost like, yeah, this is like our god's destiny for you, or something like that. And Max is struggling with learning that there's something so deadly about himself, because him and Liz wanted things to be so simple, like that they could kind of put everything behind, but, you know, Liz was always worried that the other alien shoe was going to drop, and now he's scared that, he's like, I'm that alien shoe she's worried about. All that's kind of happening with me. I could end up being, you know, it's like, right, we thought this was all said and done when we got rid of Jones, and now Teska's come to get me, and what she has fully planned for me, Max doesn't know. So immediately when he came back with everyone, after kind of going on a walk, clearing his head, he didn't tell Liz and the others about what's going on. He eventually told Michael, but Cam and Liz both immediately knew he was lying and hiding something, but Liz didn't want to push him on it, because it's like, right, I don't want to kick him into talking, as Cam was kind of referring to him as kind of a bit like a donkey. Sometimes you got to kick them to go, and Liz didn't want to do that. It's like a relationship, we don't kind of kick each other to, you know. But Cam was like, you kind of have to, sometimes you have to do that. Because she ends up getting Max to open up to her first, because it's like, right, because he wants to talk to Liz, but he's scared to, because it's like, right, with everything going on with their relationship, things kind of spiraling as they are, it's just like, right, the would-be engagement and that kind of getting pushed off, and knowing like, right, my complicated circumstances, how could we ever have like what we wanted, what we both wanted? Like, there's a wrench being thrown in it, and that wrench is me. Like, my circumstances are getting more complicated. Teska is able to use the connection from the handprint from when he healed her to jump and bring him into their mindscape. And to the point she was squeezing his organs so they would excrete the enzyme needed to kind of really further his abilities. So it's interesting and complicated how love has kind of taken on so many forms throughout this episode in just that regards of, Cam finally confessing to Max, like, right, the reason why because he was like, whoa, aren't you supposed to be on my side? She's like, I am on your side, and I want you to be happy. Like, I'm going to be called back because this whole bank heist, I'm not supposed to be on this job, and my boss is calling me back. Obviously, she probably wanted to fix the blue eye situation before going back, but it's like, I wanted to make sure you're okay because I did love you, Max, and I know that I'm not your partner anymore and Liz is, and I don't want you to ruin a good thing because this is your happiness and I do want you to be happy, So despite how her own feelings about Max and everything, she realizes like, no, it's not meant to be. You and Liz are in game. So she's trying to push them together so they can push each other. Max didn't open up to her, and Liz says like, right, Liz says like, I should have pushed you, and it's like, yeah, they both kind of take a little blame for everything going down today. So, but yeah, things aren't. They both want that relationship to be so simple. I think it's just like, to the point that Liz was I think for her sake, it's like she didn't realize what was happening beneath her feet, that the ground was cracking this entire time, and it wasn't until now that she's realizing like, oh, what's really happening, everything with Max. I think also like there's the element of, right, how she can deep dive into science and kind of get lost in it. I think there's an element of that too that's kind of driving that. That's still some part of her, like, especially because Tesca later on says that it's not just Max. Liz's role in, because Jones was always fascinated by Liz because of her brain. She's the one that's figured out so much of the alien science. It's like she's going to have a role in all of this as well. So Destiny has a lot planned for them, and it's just they might not like the end result. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But things just aren't that. It's just things are kind of taking a complicated turn for them. But obviously Cam gives him the advice, like, you need to fix your relationship because you guys are spiraling and spinning right now. You need to fix that first before you go through the trouble trying to, like, get on one knee again and proposing. So you need to figure out what you're going to do. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see ultimately how that ends up playing out. I think it will all work out in the end, but it's still probably going to be a bumpy road getting there. Who knows what else Max is capable of doing. Obviously, like, that moment of, like, because she wanted him angry, interestingly enough, because I guess for her, it's like, right, anger, she said anger is a good motivator to kind of push him to use his power. So, luckily, Liz was able to cure Cam, so no more running around pretending to be Cam now. But she is still connected to Tesca. So, and I'm assuming she's still connected to Eduardo, too. So, moment they both get cured, well, not Tesca, but we end up finding out about, we'll talk about it later, but Kyle's cousin. That's like, yeah, I figured that wasn't her original form. I thought that, I kept thinking, like, oh, that's the real person she's pretending to be. I didn't realize that person's just a person. It's not another alien she's pretending to be. It's an alien. She took on a Valenti's form. It's kind of interesting. She's got 2 Valentis under her belt now, so... But yeah, moment they cure both of them, she could always hijack someone else's form. Because that's interesting. We've only gotten little glimpses of her true form because because apparently, like, she's covered in runes and stuff, and we saw that kind of peeking through a little bit. But she went back to looking like Kyle's cousin, so she's got that form for now until, like, they're able to pass the cure onto her and kind of sever that connection. But who knows what other form she'll look like. It's interesting too because her name Tesca's I forgot what it's short for someone that is basically like a shape-shifting god or something like that, or some shape-shifting being, so it's kind of like an ironic joke. While all this is going down, we had the whole situation with Kyle and then Isabel joining him because, well, she had plenty of reason to kind of get out of Roswell. And so they end up kind of discovering, for one, it's like, hey, Eduardo has a secret daughter he hasn't told me about. It's like, and he kind of admits, it's like, yeah, this family's just riddled with secret children. Let's not forget about the whole, half-sister thing with him and Rosa. But it's like, just like every time you turn around, there's like a new, like there's the Valentis are just good at keeping children secret. So, but apparently it turns out like Eduardo and his daughter aren't on the best terms. They haven't talked in years. So that is a question of like, right, if you didn't write that letter, then who did? But it turns out it might be Allie because she's connected in all this. Because obviously she's researching all this to get I'm trying to find a cure for her and her wife's daughter, which might end up being Max, considering Max's powers upgrading. Like, maybe there might be something he can do on that front. I'll have to wait and see. But Allie's kind of missing right now. No one kind of knows where she is. She kind of goes where the research is going. Her wife is looking for her and hasn't found her. And seems like Kyle's cousin, Eduardo's daughter, doesn't know either. And apparently the artifact that was stolen is the thing that they're... Bonnie and Clyde have. Well, specifically Clyde has that Michael's helping with. So we'll circle to that. But I do love the Isabel and Kyle thing. I love that it's like, them hanging around each other and just like how awkward Kyle is. And I couldn't tell if like Isabel was picking up how he... I think when he kind of told her like how he was kind of feeling, like... I think it took her by surprise because I think she was probably feeling it a little bit, but I think she was kind of, it's that thing of you feel a certain way, but you're not really sure, especially with everything that's going on. Like, she doesn't blame Anasa because it's like, right, like, I couldn't be completely honest with her. It's like, yeah, like, I want to be honest with her, but it's the last minute. I had the opportunity to be truthful to her, like, my unwillingness to be open with somebody, you know? And that opportunity, you know, passed by, so... And this whole conversation about love and stuff and being there to help Kyle, you could tell it just made him go like, we should probably look through the files and then I got to check on our patient and stuff. Like, he was just making excuses. Even when she was kind of like believing like, like Anasta wasn't my one. And so she wanted to still believe that love was an opportunity. You know, it's like, oh, so here's to love and aliens. And she's like, oh, you still owe me a dance. He's like, what? She's like, come on, it's just a dance. And they start dancing. And he's just like, she's like, yeah, I know you, how you feel about interspecies relationships. I forgot what the exact word is. She was like, oh, like, she was kind of like, oh, you kind of see me as disgusting. He's like, no, not disgusting at all. And she's like, he's like, actually quite the opposite. She's like, it's the opposite. He's like, beautiful, actually. And I was like, come on. I was like, come on, please, please. And they lean in and they do it. I'm like, yes. I'm like, because I love that moment. Because I don't know, it's something adorable about that moment, that sparking moment of like that hesitation between two people. I'm like, oh, that beautiful picturesque moment where it's like you're both kind of leaning in, you're just not quite sure, and then you go for it. I'm like, that hesitation is just such a cute thing to me when it comes to a relationship. And I'm like, oh, and I'm like, I'm so happy for it. Once again, it kind of sucks between her, Isabel, and Asta, but I'm like, also because I know how Kyle feels about Isabel, and it's just like, you know, I'm the dude. I think it's also from the perspective of like, you know, especially when you combine that with what Cam said about like, right, about kind of going for like, you know, not telling someone how you really feel from the beginning, you know, because even Max admitted to Cam, it's like, yeah, I loves you too, but it's like, yeah, she's like, yeah, you and Liz are in game, and you know, hopefully Kyle and Isabel are. So especially for Isabel, because they found out that the Valentes have an even deeper history with aliens than people, you know, because obviously there's everything with Kyle's dad and why he got sick in the first place was that facility the aliens were being held, but their family's history goes back even further because there's been a split between their families. One side of the family, to protect the aliens and all the artifacts and everything related, they separated from the family, the Valentes that live in Roswell, because that was their way to kind of like tighten it and protect that secret even more. So that's why, like, I doubt Kyle's dad knew anything about any of this, despite the family situation, but still. So their history runs even deeper. I mean, there's a lot of deep connections all around because Dallas and Maria made their own, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, it's like, yeah, the Valentes and I don't know, it kind of reminds me of that Once Upon a Time thing of like, oh man, everyone's a lot more connected and there's so many lines and connections that draw so many people together. Like, oh, you're related to this person because of so on and so forth. Just very much like the Isabella Maria thing. That's a very like Once Upon a Time like family situation to some extent. But other than that, going into the Dallas and Maria thing, Dallas is trying to regain some memories of his time here on Earth, and I guess like so he did get to spend some time with his dad here. He just didn't remember it because they were buried so deep after just everything that went down. But he was starting to unearth them, and so him and Maria went looking. The symbol they were looking for, I'm like, oh, I always associate that symbol with charmed. I guess in my head I thought it was like a charm, but it's a real symbol that obviously represents like that trio. It represents that all across, and obviously we have the triads here. We also have the triads and like charmed, so it's just very befitting. But when it's all said and done, he remembers planting a seed with his dad. You know, home isn't just out there. It's in your head. It's in your memories. It's in your heart, and even beneath your feet. So I guess it was about, you know, we might not be able to go back to Oasis, but we can make this our new home, which is a thing for Max. It's like, no, like Oasis isn't my home. Like its situation is its situation, sure, but this is my home. Michael's in that complicated territory because he's always wanted to know where he's from. He always wanted to know, but there's still plenty here. There's his family. There's Alex. But there's still the world that they're from, a home he's never really known. So that's what complicates things on that front. But I wonder, did Theo always plan on making this their home away from home? Well, to be fair, the ship, well, because the way Michael talks about it, right, the fruit later on, he says it's not food, it's fuel. So what maybe Theo's plan always was to eventually get them back home. They needed to go back home to kind of fix things, so begs the question, when it's all said and done, will this be a situation that ends with them going back home? It's what Michael would want, but how will he bring Alex along? Will they kind of go in a star-crossed lover situation? I mean, star-crossed meaning they almost like would be separated. Hopefully that won't be the case. But will the others have no choice but to go home to kind of fix things there? I don't know. Because it also depends on how this whole Tesca, Bonnie, and Clyde thing. Because I don't think that's going to be a happy ending. I get the feeling like, sadly, probably like Bonnie's going to die, or Clyde, or probably all three of them probably. We'll have to wait and see. But they planted the tree, they found it, but Maria realizes it's like, whoa, my mom has a drawing of this picture. So it's like, yeah, I thought it was like maybe just a vision thing, but like, no, like typically the visions would be associated with Earth and not just anything Oasis related. So it's like, right, it's from, she came here before, so Dallas and Maria have an even deeper connection family-wise too, so what that necessarily entails, we'll have to see. But really quickly, on the Maria subject, she finally opens up to Liz about her powers being gone, which Liz is immediately like, right, I'm going to fix everything. But Maria's like, no, like, I might not be able to see the future anymore, but you gave me that. You gave me an actual future. Because if she had her powers back, she'd just be expediting her own death, you know? Just like her mom. And it's just like, this gives me an opportunity to actually have a life, to actually have a future. So that's a blessing in its own regard. It sucks that she doesn't have her powers, won't be able to see her mom anymore through those powers. And it's like, right, I was so caught up in everything else that I didn't even realize what you were going through. But for Maria, it's like, right now, I don't need a scientist, I just need a friend. So being there to kind of support each other through their complications, everything Maria's going through, the new discoveries on her front, everything Liz is going through, some new discoveries on her front. And finally we get to the Michael situation, where turns out Eduardo, didn't escape. Bonnie was actually told to kill him, because she's always been like the one that, I guess it's Clyde's way of testing her. I wonder, was it even Clyde's decision, or was it Tesca's decision to make Bonnie have to like get her hands dirty? It's like to prove that she's down for the cause, because she's so very, it's not what she's all about. Which is interesting, because from Clyde's perspective, it's like, right, she's always been about the cause. This is about saving our home and everything. So of course he's trying to live out this dream for Bonnie's sake. But for Bonnie, it's like, no, like, this is where I want to be. Because he talks, I think it's interesting, because Bonnie has a very optimistic outlook on things, whereas Clyde has a very pessimistic view, because he sees Earth as like, yes, like Oasis had its flaws, sure, but Earth has a lot of flaws that it just covers up in this illusion of beauty. Yes, things are nice, but a lot of it is just covered up. Just a lot of the terrible things are just covered up by illusions. Which obviously him and Michael bond about their kind of upbringings. Like Michael was never like taken in by anyone just because everyone always saw the troubled child, and Clyde never actually had a home of his own. He was always on the run, stealing and fighting and do whatever he had to do to survive until Jones found him. Jones gave him purpose. Bonnie gave him value. So for him, it's like, that's why she's so important. Like, he might push her sometimes, but that's just because he cares so much about her, and he wants her to put her in a position where she'll be okay. That I think maybe almost like that, if anything happened to me, I know that she'll have the strength and resolve and to pursue and continue, and that everything will be all right. That's at least how I'm viewing. But Michael eventually did track down Bonnie and convinced her to come back, because it's like, right, luckily she didn't do anything to Eduardo, but for her it's like she wants nothing to do with the whole Tesca and Clyde thing. It's like, right, they're people who speak at half truth, so she has no idea what they're fully got planned, just knowing that the plan was to leave this planet, but also to bring the clone Max with them. But for Michael, it's like, right, if we work together, we can do something about Michael. I mean, we could do something about Tesca and Clyde, because if you run away, like, you won't get far. They'll eventually find you. And also, Tesca, the little I know from her, doesn't seem like the type who's just going to let you walk away with no issue. So they do find Eduardo, so I think Eduardo will eventually get cured. Luckily, because of that, well, I don't know. Like, if he's a corpse, that'll probably be enough for Tesca to be like, okay, if he's dead, that explains our severed connection. So they probably have to make sure to hide Eduardo so that they don't find out, that Clyde nor Tesca doesn't find out that he's still alive. Because at least that could be the justification of like, well, the connection's severed because he's dead. So, like I said, we just don't know what... I'm sure she's going to keep wearing Eduardo's daughter's face, but we have no idea... I'm eventually assuming they're going to cure her just like they did Cam, so Tesca's probably going to have to choose a new face. Or maybe... I wonder how long is it going to be before we see what she really looks like. Once again, I still assume like one of the faces she has is Allie's. She probably has Allie and Alex's face, because we know she has Alex. And I'm assuming Alex and Allie are necessary to her plans. She's probably also trying to get Liz as well, just like Jones wanted, so... Well, we already know that. But... That's what... Once again, Michael's against stopping all of them, but he's also gotten to see their planet. Not just through visions, but from, like, the planet in the solar system. He's able to actually see from the outside Oasis. But when it's all said and done... something's going on with Michael. Because earlier, like, when he was trying to light a lantern, it didn't happen, and then eventually it did. I was like, okay, that was weird. And then later on, he's trying his telekinesis, but it doesn't work. And then all of a sudden, it's like he starts burning up. I was like, oh, I think you're sick. And Michael's like, no, aliens don't get sick. And I was like, well, by human standards, like, maybe, like, nothing on this planet can affect you, but I was like, you are around people who are from Oasis, so, maybe he finally picked up some, like, they don't have an immunization to maybe, like, some sickness from, like, so, some stuff from their planet is rubbing off on them, and maybe Max is a special case where it won't affect him, because Max has been around Tesca without issue, but Michael's been around Bonnie and Clyde a lot, so maybe like some of the Oasis organisms, like bacteria of some sort, might be having an effect on them, because it's like, right, you've been exposed to human stuff and that has no effect on you, but Oasis bacteria and organisms might, so that might be what's going on here, and the fact is it's causing like a short circuit in his power, so it's interesting. Maybe it's something else entirely. We'll have to wait and see what ends up happening going forward with that. But I'm excited to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.